If you read the title of this video, you'll know that 1 year ago, I started learning Unreal Engine. That the game was to up my game and my games' game. That I wanted to make real projects and start properly publishing things. You'd know that I sat down and dedicated myself to my craft. Well, you'd be wrong. It was 1 year and 3 months ago. This video is kind of late. Let's get into it. I ended up making 4 big projects over the year, so I'm gonna take you through those and then share what I learned, some challenges I faced, and most importantly, why I will no longer be using Unreal Engine for making games. My first project with the engine, for some reason, I decided to start in the middle of exam season last December. I don't know why I decided to learn a completely new engine at the time. Even better, I gave myself only 30 days to start and finish the game. It went about as well as you could expect, but honestly, a good experience. I learned a lot about Unreal and time management in general. I ended up making a mini exploration game called Runes and Rain. It focused heavily on environment art, which I enjoyed a lot because it's not something I had very much experience with. And one thing I gotta say about Unreal, it is very satisfying making things look good. There's a YouTube channel called Prismatica Dev who does these 5-minute material videos, and every couple days I'd watch one and try implementing the visuals into the game. If you want to level up your technical art skills in Unreal Engine, definitely check this channel out. Everything on there is beyond awesome. Now, mechanically, the game kinda sucks, but it is actually one of my proudest projects. I went into development knowing nothing about the engine, just thinking, let's see what I can make in 30 days. And it did a great job of simulating most of the game dev lifecycle, from concepting to development to polish and then release. I learned a ton about how the engine works and was very happy with how everything turned out, excepting my sleep schedule. Didn't like that very much. Anyway, there's a full video on the project if you're interested. It's somewhere. The next project I started just after Lethal Company got really popular, and it was a big inspiration throughout development. It was called Bone Grease. The idea here is that you're a mechanic making your way through an alien desert, scavenging for parts to keep your mobile base running, and avoiding the monsters trying to eat you. I learned a ton from working on this, and it showed me what I believe to be the most game-changing thing I've ever learned about game dev: consistency in confidence. I am a perfectionist, which means I have a terrible habit of spending painful amounts of time nitpicking every little thing until it's just right. When doing art for video games, this sucks, because I'd be spending 3 or 4 times longer than needed on every 3D model and texture and animation, and worse, stressing about it because I never thought it was good enough. It was becoming such a problem that when starting this project, I told myself, screw making it look good, just make it. I know this is a really simple concept, but it was revolutionary for me. I realized each individual asset does not have to be perfect or even remotely pleasing to look at. The key is just consistency. If everything looks equally bad, when you put it all together, it suddenly goes from bad art to a cohesive, intentional art style. Trust me, it works. And the amount of time you save by intentionally not putting in a ton of effort into each asset is incredible. One tip I have is to find a quick, repeatable workflow for texturing and modeling that gives interesting visuals in the least amount of work possible. For example, the workflow I used with Bone Grease is this. Quickly make a very low poly model that doesn't have much detail. For texturing, just separate different sections of the model into basic colors, and then add some procedural grunge or darkening based off of ambient occlusion. Finally, I find an interesting noise texture and use it as a very intense height map. Repeating this process for a bunch of assets, and each one looks okay on its own, but together they look great. I also threw on a shell shader because everyone knows it's an easy way to add instant style. Unfortunately, I never ended up finishing this game. Ironically, I was a little too motivated and overworked myself, burning out after just a month. It was a whole thing with a good lesson learned, and there's a whole video on it if you want. Regardless, I left the game in a decent state, and most importantly, the work I did here gave me enough experience and confidence that I, for the most part, got the hang of Unreal. So I decided to take on something bigger. And this is where things started going downhill. What you're seeing here is a project titled The Bird Roads. Well, actually, this is just the combat demo. Due to technical limitations I'll get into in a bit, I never got past this stage. The Bird Roads is a game I've been wanting to make for a while. One might even call it a dream game. It's a small action RPG set in the sky, where NPCs are simulated globally in real time to make it more dynamic. So different factions being in control of different parts of the world would make the environment look different and give you different quests and such. Kind of like that one scene from that one trailer from Dying Light 2, like 5 years ago. This here is actually some first test of that system. You can see all the different NPC ships going around, attacking each other and buying and selling cargo. I actually used this project as part of a paper I helped write on agent-based modeling and HPC systems, so that was also pretty cool. The reason this is a separate application is because I wanted to abstract the world simulation from the actual game code as much as possible. Writing it in C++ within Unreal seemed like a bad idea at the time, as this was a pretty big project, so testing and debugging the simulation by itself would quickly become very complex. Thankfully, Unreal Engine is supposed to support natively interaction with external programs written in Python for some reason, so that's what I tried. Unfortunately, Python kind of sucks for most real-time applications, and it quickly became clear that the simulation I was writing would not be scalable. And that's okay, because biting the bullet and writing it directly in Unreal is probably better anyway. But the problems didn't end there. The combat system itself was quite intricate. Each airship is actually made up of a bunch of smaller components, such as the gas bag, the hull, each cannon, each engine. Hell, even the steering wheel and individual fuel tanks were their own entities. This was necessary for the damage and flight systems, and especially because the NPC crews needed to interact with each component separately. Unreal Engine, however, really did not like this. The actor system they use for representing entities is great in most cases, but doesn't interact well with actors made out of other actors, and just compositional hierarchies in general, really. It took an incredible amount of work to get things functional, and everything broke when I made small changes or new additions. Additionally, the physics system just wasn't having it. I think it's due to the components making other components thing I mentioned earlier, but performance for even the flight of a single airship was surprisingly bad, and the more airships I added, the worse it got. I tested, and it seems to be an issue with the physics engine itself instead of the flight code, as making an airship accelerate in a straight line with only native add force functions has the same performance issues, weirdly. It seems to be related to the size of the object interacting with physics, as I also had a ton of issues with terrain collision because of how big both the terrain and airships were, and I didn't really see an easy way around this. All in all, the combat demo did turn out to be a lot of fun after the many months it took to make, but I do not think this game is a project suitable for Unreal Engine. I think that's completely fine. Unreal has a ton of strengths and it's really good at what it does. If it can't handle this super complex, super niche thing I'm throwing at it, that's definitely a me problem. Funnily enough, the video I made on this project is the only one that doesn't have a script. I wanted to try out something different for the video format, and in my opinion, absolutely failed. It has the lowest production value of any video I've ever made, and it also has the most views of any video ever made, so I don't know, decide for yourself, I guess. With that out of the way, I finally thought it was time to make a real game. You know, start to finish, make a couple devlogs, do playtesting, and then release it. And that is exactly what happened. This is Wimzer. Go check it out on itch.io. Like, it's kind of bad, but it's there. So, this was a lot of fun to make, absolute blast. I made 3 separate devlogs, each covering a different focus of development, namely combat, level design, and enemies. It's a fast-paced spell slinger where you're combining different spells for unique behavior. And you have a sword, because why not? My favorite thing about this project was how everything started coming together almost on its own. The spell system, for example, after spending ages in the design phase, felt genuinely magical when combos and interactions just started working without me explicitly coding them in. Like, there's an explosion spell, and a homing spell, and a summon rock spell, and you can string them together to make a heat-seeking bowling ball that explodes on contact, and it's awesome. There's also movement tech that playtesters found where they combine the little dash you have with a knockback from the sword to bounce around, get over walls, and dodge attacks, and none of this was intentional, but it made the game so much more fun. I really took the message of not stressing over individual assets to heart when working on this, and it shows. There are 7 unique enemies, and I made them with another minimum work modeling and texture pipeline, which again feels pretty great when looking at everything together. I definitely think this game could be better with more content, more levels, and definitely some more polish, but overall, I'm really happy with it. The scope actually got really big compared to its original concept, so the fact that I managed to release it at all, I think is pretty awesome. Now that all sounds really positive, but it had its own issues too, similar to the previous project. And ultimately the reason I didn't continue working on this after it was released was because I wanted to start using something other than Unreal Engine. Here's why. Overall, the experience has been incredibly positive. Unreal Engine is an unreal tool, one might say, and the time I spent working with it has taught me so much about game dev in a practical and theoretical sense. My favorite thing about it has to be the material graph, I'd say. Insane technology. I generally don't look at image data the same way anymore, as it's taught me so many different things about cool visual hacks, hyper efficient memory usage, shaders, and just technical art in general. It's truly awesome. But also overall, the general statement I'll use to sum up development in the engine itself is this. Unreal Engine provides you with a ton of absolutely incredible tools and systems for making games. But if you want something that falls outside of this functionality, you will be spending just as much time trying to hack your way around these tools and systems as you are actually making games. Which is ultimately what happens to me with these projects, and why for future games, I'll be switching to Godot. Godot is super lightweight and just a lot more bare bones. It has less features and you're going to end up doing a lot more work, but for the games I'm making, the control this gives you is a lot better. It's also a lot more stable than Unreal, because Unreal crashes a lot, and it has a really frustrating habit of sometimes corrupting your levels and blueprints when this happens, which I was really struggling with towards the end of working on bigger projects. Unreal Engine feels a lot more geared towards larger teams than it is solo developers, and I would really like the opportunity to try Unreal again in this context, either working for a AAA company or some indie studio, because a lot of the features I've been trying to circumvent really truly help when working on massive games with a lot of people. So I hope I get to experience that one day, but for now, we're going indie, baby.